Well, today we're going to talk about company level standby life safety duties. This is one of the more fun things that we get to do. It can be boring at times because you sit around waiting for stuff to happen, but it's also, I've seen a lot of really interesting things, got to meet some interesting people, um, got to meet some famous people. So these are also known as FSO duties or fire safety officer duties. So we're going to breeze through this one. I hope you took the time to watch this video. It's kind of interesting. It's one of the, well, yeah, like I said, kind of more fun things that we get to do. Yeah, those are the objectives. I'm going to skip all that and this too. So, fire prevention duties and responsibilities when sometimes when we require permits, the the process or the place they're going to be or whatever is outside of the code, or we feel is an unsafe situation. So, under those conditions, we will require that the owner or the builder or the film company will have a fire safety officer of some sort. There's a variety of different ways of dealing with this. Different fire departments have different policies. If you go to Pasadena, they're very strict. LA City is a little bit more lenient. LA County is kind of in between. And we'll talk about that. So whenever filming is going on, maybe in a public place or with FX or special effects or brush areas, we're probably going to want them to have a firefighter or a retiree or some kind of a fire watch. Fireworks, of course, we're going to require them to have a firefighter on duty. And some assembly type events, think raves, parties, they're in non-assembly occupancies. So this is pretty common, happens a lot after the award shows. So, Paramount will want to have a party for a movie that was up for an award, and they'll maybe do it on one of their sound stages. Well, that's not rated to be an assembly place. So we're going to require them to have a fire safety officer on duty during the party. Or maybe they hold it in their office, whatever. If it's not a place that was made to be an assembly, then we're going to require that they have a fire safety officer. And as I said before, the raves, they're usually in these warehouses. They're not intended for assembly, so we require an officer. Some of these big events, the bigger events, we're going to also require that they have an incident action plan and that they're going to be prepared for any kind of emergency. So, what are standby life safety duties? What happens is we require that either a fire safety officer or an FSA be on scene while they are filming. Now, some things, like this show I worked on, that's Jessica Biehl in the red coat. And this is right around when she got married. Who's that guy she married? Justin Timberlake, I think that's his name. Yeah, but she kept looking at me, so I had to kind of show her my ring, and not available. Sorry. Just kidding. Okay, so she was going to shoot somebody in this one scene. Now, they didn't require that they have a fire safety officer for the whole time with this movie because it was kind of a small thing and it was at a house in a remote area. So they didn't feel that they had to have a fire safety officer the whole time. But when they did the special effect, they did. So I got the call and went over, and so she was going to shoot somebody, and when somebody gets shot, they have little squibs in their clothing. And squibs are little explosive devices that, they want to make sure that they explode away from the body, not into the body. and they put these on the back of some clothing so that when you see them get shot in a TV show or a movie, and there's also usually little red fake blood packs in there too. And when the bullets hit, you see the little explosion and blood spurts out, and the clothing tears, and the person goes to the ground. So that's what they were going to do here. And I was there as long as the special effect was going on. We want to make sure that we check that they do things according to the permit or according to the plan. So this photograph was a show that I worked on, Sons of Anarchy, and the Sons of Anarchy were being chased by a sheriff's car. Maybe you saw this episode. The guy jumped out of a motorcycle that he stole. I think it was a police motorcycle that he stole, and he jumps into a moving van, and then the bike goes flying around, and these guys go to avoid the bike and go rolling off off the road and into this ditch. Well, this is Agua Dulce, and this is the Soledad Canyon riverbed that they landed in. So I was there to make sure that they did everything right and that they acted according to their permit. And it was kind of an interesting deal. Well, first of all, I never knew how they rolled cars. I thought they always did it with ramps. But it was really interesting to see what they did here. First of all, they built this up, roll bars galore. This thing was so safe when he went rolling off the road. There was no injury to the driver. But they put this big piston rod in the bottom undercarriage, and it's driven either by a nitrogen or some type of a gas. And at just the right point on the steering wheel, there is a little trigger. And as the driver was driving towards the road, and he kind of flips his wheels and he pushes that button, and the rod goes blasting out the bottom of the vehicle, and this SUV went flying off the road. Well, he was supposed to go off side by side, but the thing came out with a lot more velocity than they thought, and it went end over end. Kind of surprised everybody, and a few people were running, some of the camera crew, because they thought it was going to go into the crowd, but no, it went off the road like it was supposed to. They had a ton of GoPros out in fact, that's what those guys in the foreground are checking. They were checking their GoPros, and also they were taking pictures to make sure that they got the scene right as they went to the next part. But then they came to me and they said, hey, we want to light this thing on fire. We're going to use propane bars, and we're going to light it on fire so that it looks like it exploded. And I said, that's not in the permit. But see that bottom part? We want to provide good customer service. So I said, if you want me to, I'll call the inspectors, the film unit, and see if they're willing to give you a verbal permit on that. But I will tell you that I think it's a problem because it's really dry out. The wind was blowing. It was about 15, 20 miles per hour. And we were in a canyon. And I could just see if we had any kind of a spark or any of this grass got exposed to the flames, I could see this thing going all the way to Palmdale in about an hour. So, yeah, it was a bad idea. But I checked, and the film unit said no, they felt that it was too hazardous based on where we were. And by then, they'd already changed their mind. I went over to tell them, yeah, they're saying no. But they said, you know what, we decided we're going to use computer graphics. So they're going to CG it, and they added the fire a different way. There's lots of different kinds of standby duties. There's fire suppression. So sometimes it's actually a fire engine that is nearby. And then the other kind is fire prevention, where a fire inspector or a retiree will stand by. So I do this on a regular basis. I wear a uniform, have my badge. I look kind of like a firefighter, but instead of wearing my blues, I'm wearing white and black. And I've done a whole bunch of things. Now, before I retired, I worked on the show Pirates of the Caribbean 3, and that's what this picture on the bottom was. That was the longest shift I've ever taken with a fire safety officer duties. 22 hours of watching them finish this scene. They had to go to the Caribbean the very next day. They were flying out, so they had to finish. And the problem was they couldn't get the monkey to put this candle by a rocket that was going to fire off and go into a building and cause an explosion. So it took 72 takes to get the monkey to put the candle on the right spot. It was kind of funny. But yeah, Keira Knightley was there. Everybody except for Johnny Depp was there. Barbosa, the guy, what's his name? I forget his real name. But it was really fun to be there and to watch the whole scene pan out. And yeah, Keira Knightley was really cute. We're there to watch for the hazards, not only for special effects, as I mentioned before, but electrical, exiting issues, and stunts. So I'm going to show you some pictures about exiting and FX. But this top right picture, that was by far the weirdest show that I ever worked on. This was a outer space zombies sci-fi super low budget, really dumb thing. Now this young lady here, she was the stunt actress. She was going to do this big fight scene, and she was very beautiful. And as you can see, that one grip guy there to the left, he was staring at her. And I thought she was just there for, in those kind of sci-fi weird zombie movies, they always have some eye candy. I thought that's what she was there for. And then she did her stunt. And this girl is like a quadruple, triple X black belt to the max. I don't know what they call it. She was like a 50th degree black belt, whatever. She used to fight in the ring and all that kind of stuff. So she was bad to the bone, and they were going to do a stunt, and I was there just to make sure that everything was done safely. And of course, we're there for special effects. You look at that picture on the top right, and you kind of wonder, yeah, those guys are a little close. Well, a lot of times they do. I think they call it plating it. They take a picture of it and have those people jump, and then later on, and then the camera's in the exact same spot, looking the exact same way. Then they do the explosion, and they put one on top of the other, and it looks like they were there. But there's a lot of dumb things that have been done in special effects, and a lot of stunts that have gone awry. Maybe some of you know that Bruce Lee's son, what was his name? Wayne Lee, or I forget what his name is, but he was shot with a dummy bullet that wasn't supposed to be able to propel, but it propelled, and it was enough to kill him. And there was a young lady who was killed in Atlanta just recently. A train ran into her, and she was one of the camera people. So we're there to make sure that they don't. Oh, I'll tell you another dumb one. This was a non-permitted filming. They wouldn't have got permission to do this. This special effects person said, "Hey, I made a RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade. Is that what they call it? An RPG." And he says, "We can use it in this scene." And he went to fire it, and it blew up and killed him. So yeah, they're not supposed to use a real RPG. This is not Another thing that we do is fireworks, firework displays. Disney every night has a crew of fire safety officers that they have their own little fire department, and they put them out there to watch the fireworks. We get called out sometimes for racing events. That'll usually be a whole fire engine company, balloon launching, and in these kind of bigger things, we're going to have an incident action plan and an emergency plan. I mentioned that one of the other things that we're there for is to make sure that they keep proper exiting. When they're filming on a soundstage, there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of people, you can get overcrowded. So we're there to make sure that they keep it safe. Sometimes, and these are all extras. This was on the show Switched at Birth, and I don't know, this guy thought maybe I was a talent scout or something, and he looked so goofy there. I went to take the picture, and he smiled for me. But I'm there to make sure that they know the way out and that we keep it safe. And the way we do that is with a thing called the 4-foot line. We want to keep all of the exits properly labeled, and as you can see, there's exit signs here. You can see a little bit of the yellow line, but I have a better picture of it. This is the 4-foot line. So around the exterior of the soundstage, we want to make sure no equipment gets put there and that there is a path for everybody to make it to one of the exits. So you go to the walls, then you follow the 4-foot line to an exit. And that's what everybody's trained to do. So I get up every hour or so, even if I have already checked it earlier, I will go and check it again every hour because they're working, and then I'll come and boom, all of this equipment's in the 4-foot line. Hey, you guys got to move all that stuff, And so here's another picture, and this is the deal. Which way out? How do we get out of here? You see all that equipment? If I'm not monitoring, it ends up blocking the way and the pathway out, and ends up like the picture on the right, where you're just going, I have no idea how to get out of here. We're also there to make sure that all of the fire protection equipment is working and verify that all the permit requirements are honored. And I'm there to cease events which are unsafe or not permitted. So my job is to make sure that it stays safe and that nobody gets injured. If I feel, in a sense, the producers and the directors, they're pretty big, powerful people. But in a certain sense, when I'm there as the fire safety officer, I'm actually more powerful than they are. If there's a reason, I can stop filming and say, don't do another thing. We need to fix this. We need to make it safe. If we require an emergency evacuation plan, then they got to put together forms and make sure that there's accountability, that there's egress plans, and a plan of where everybody to meet. So all the staff functions, all of that's got to be on the plan. They got to have procedures for reporting a fire, procedure for notifying or relocating or evacuating, a site plan, floor plan, list of hazards, names of all the people doing maintenance on systems, but names of all the people so that they can have accountability to make sure that they got everybody out of a building if there's a fire or something. So it has to be updated on a regular basis. And if we require it, we might have them do drills. So we're going to verify that they comply with the fire code, have all the proper contact information, and that all the staff are familiar with the plan. Some of the things that got to be on the plans is the exit routes, the evacuation routes, the exits themselves, then the exit routes, the horizontal exits if they exist, utility shutoffs, where's the stairwells, where's the fire alarm, sprinkler controls, all that stuff. Um, Now, what are some of the target occupancies for these FSO duties? Um, if we got assemblies, again, that are a big deal kind of thing, or assembly in a place that's not uh, an assembly occupancy, then we're going to have an FSO, like warehouses. If we have big auditoriums, a big event, sometimes we'll require fire safety officers. Um, and like I said, the big races, fairs, events, uh, like golf tournaments and things like that. When we do this, we're going to make sure that they're all prepared, that they trained everybody on their evacuation plan, that they have plans for every scenario possible emergency, and they're going to have people of authority, and we like them to be identified, like wearing vests that are got fluorescent or whatever, and they want to have a plan for like. Incident action plan that they're ready to have, like with a go kit, where if we have a disaster, that they've got everything ready to be pulled out and they can go into incident action plan. Now, sometimes now this is boring, and usually the fire department doesn't do this these days, but sometimes we require a fire watch because um, some of the fire protection equipment is out of service. So if the systems are out of service, we need to notify the system contractor. We need to make sure that everything else is in good working order. The egress system, the emergency action plans are there. But what we're going to do is we're going to tag out the system as out of service. We're going to get the process going and getting a repairman out. We can refer this to fire prevention, the fire marshal's office, but usually what we're going to do is we're going to require a fire watch. We're not going to make them pay a firefighter to be there, and no firefighter wants to be there. This is boring service. This is just standing watching a building be there because the alarm system or the sprinkler system isn't working. So we'll make them fill out a fire watch form, and we'll give them a list of instructions. The fire watch has to have a way of contacting, dialing 911, has to have a way to contact people in the building to tell them to evacuate. Usually they use security firms, sometimes off-duty firefighters, sometimes their own facility personnel. The type of coverage. Now, I mentioned to you that there's different levels. So the lowest level is we're going to let them hire a security person or someone and be a fire watch. They're basically self-monitoring themselves. We tell them the rules, what they got to do, and then we might drive by and check up on them, and that's about it. The next level for LA County Fire, not all fire departments have this, but we have a level called FSA, Fire Safety Advisor. And these are retirees like myself, and I do this. I'll get a job and go and work for a film company, and I'm the fire safety guy all day. I go on their payroll, they pay me, and by the way, it's good money. And I work anywhere from 10 to 14 hours. They're usually 12-hour days. And then the highest level is they're going to have to hire an actual firefighter, and that costs a ton of money. I know the LA County Fire Department charges film companies $175 an hour for a firefighter to be there. Now, the firefighter doesn't make that money. They get paid their normal rate of pay, but the county charges them $175 for them to be there. And this is all based on the risk. So low risk, private security, or maybe their own personnel. Medium risk for LA County Fire, we're going to put in retired firefighters. High risk, it's going to be firefighters. And there are other considerations. Sometimes we do take into consideration that they can't afford the cost, so we might work with some different things. If we do give them a fire watch that's they're going to hire someone, they've got to be able to do all of this stuff. And they got to be trained in emergency response. They got to be familiar with evacuation safety. So that's why usually it's somebody from a security firm. And lastly, the special events, we want to make sure, these are the things we just want to make sure are happening, that code requirements are being followed, that we follow the local ordinances, that we provide proper fire suppression, that we verify adequate egress and ingress, and that the permit is being obeyed, that the conditions of the permit are being obeyed. And we're going to monitor any cooking or ignition sources, look for any risky behaviors, and we also want to manage any combustible materials. So that's it. That's what we do. It's kind of fun. Sometimes it's really boring. But, I've got to meet a lot of interesting people. Mark Harmon from NCIS, super nice guy. One of my favorite shows is The Vikings. I got to meet the guy that plays Floki, and I was just like, I was a little geeked out, I got to say. I'm not usually geeked out at these things, but I was that time. So it's kind of fun. Hopefully someday you get to do this when you're a firefighter.